The house was silent, except for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. I watched her move around the room, her movements deliberate and strangely calm, like she was preparing for something that had been planned for a long time. It was the kind of silence that spoke volumes, the kind that makes you feel like you're invisible, even though you're right there. And I was right there, watching her. She didn't know I was home yet. I had been sitting in the living room for nearly 20 minutes, my coat still on, my briefcase by my side. I had come back early from work, something I rarely did, and now, it seemed like it was the worst decision I could have made. I'd always been a creature of routine, someone who preferred the ordinary, the predictable. But in the last few weeks, I had noticed small changes in her behavior. The late nights, the quiet phone calls, the sudden trips that never seemed to involve me. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, I trusted her, didn't I? But today, as I walked through the front door and caught sight of her hurriedly packing a suitcase, I knew something was off. She didn't hear me approach. She was too focused on what she was doing, oblivious to the storm she was creating in my chest. When she finally noticed me standing there, she froze for a split second, her eyes wide. For a moment, there was a flicker of recognition, a brief hesitation, but then she turned back to her task as if nothing had changed. As if I wasn't standing there, watching her life unravel before my eyes. I didn't speak at first. I didn't have the words. The betrayal, if that's even what it was still sinking in. But I couldn't just stand there and let her pack her things without confronting it. "You're leaving?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. She didn't answer right away. She just kept folding her clothes, avoiding my gaze. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She didn't have to. The look on her face said everything I needed to know. She had already made up her mind. When she finally looked at me, her expression was different. There was a coldness in her eyes, something I hadn't seen before. "I'm going to him," she said, and there was no trace of emotion in her voice. Just a statement of fact, as if I was a stranger to her now. The words hit me like a slap. I felt the air leave my lungs, and for a moment, I thought I might collapse. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen in place, unable to move. I wasn't sure if I was angry or hurt or something else entirely. I was a man who had spent most of his life avoiding confrontation, but now, in this moment, I was forced to face the one thing I had always feared, losing her. She continued to pack, not bothering to explain. She didn't need to. I had already seen enough. I reached for my phone, the one thing that might give me some kind of clarity. She didn't notice. I opened the camera app and hit record. The sound of her packing echoed in the room, and I couldn't help but wonder if this was how it was always going to end. Then, as if on cue, she paused. For the first time, she looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the hesitation in her eyes. The regret. But it was too late. The truth was already out. "Don't," she said, her voice barely audible. "Please, don't do this." But I didn't stop recording. Not yet. I had to know. The tension in the room was so thick, you could almost feel it pressing down on you. Every second felt like an eternity as I stood there, phone in hand, watching her pack her things. She moved with a strange calmness, as if she were preparing for a simple trip, not the end of everything we had built together. I wanted to shout, to scream, to demand answers, but the words were stuck in my throat. My mind raced, trying to process the reality of what was unfolding before me. "You're really doing this," I muttered, more to myself than to her. My voice sounded strange, distant, as if it didn't even belong to me. I had always prided myself on being the quiet one, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who kept things together. But now, I was losing everything. She didn't respond at first. She just continued folding clothes, her movements robotic. It was like she was somewhere else, somewhere far away, somewhere with him. The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. The man she was leaving me for. The one she had been sneaking around with for God knows how long. I couldn't bring myself to say his name, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. What was he like? How long had this been going on? How could she do this to me, after everything we had been through? I took a step forward, my hand still holding the phone, the camera silently recording. I knew I shouldn't be doing this. I knew that filming her wasn't going to change anything, but in that moment, it felt like the only thing I had control over. I had to capture this. I had to make sure I had proof of what she was doing. When she noticed me moving, her eyes flickered up briefly, just long enough for me to see the guilt written all over her face. She knew what I was doing. She knew this wasn't just about the suitcase anymore. This was about something much deeper, much darker. But she didn't stop. She didn't even flinch. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as dust. Why? It was the only word I could manage to force out. It wasn't a question. It was a plea. I was begging for an answer that I knew would never come. She had already made her decision. She had already chosen him over me. And I wasn't sure if that hurt more than the fact that she was leaving or the fact that I had never seen it coming. Her eyes met mine, and for the briefest moment, I thought I saw a flicker of hesitation. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by something else. Something cold. Something final. She set the last of her things into the bag, then stood up, smoothing her clothes with practiced indifference. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice so soft that I almost couldn't hear it. "But I have to go." I wanted to say something, anything, to stop her. I wanted to beg her to stay, to tell her that we could work through it. But deep down, I knew it was over. The trust was gone. The love was gone. What was left between us now? Nothing but a shattered reflection of what we once had. She zipped up the suitcase, glancing at me one last time before turning to the door. I stood frozen, unable to move, as she walked past me without a word. It wasn't until I heard the sound of the door closing behind her that I finally exhaled. I don't know how long I stood there after that. Minutes, hours, who knows? Time seemed to stop. I looked down at the phone in my hand, still recording. The screen flickered, showing the final moments of her leaving. It was almost surreal. I had never imagined it would end like this, with her walking away without a second glance. And yet, here I was, staring at the footage of my life crumbling before me. It was a reality I hadn't been prepared for, but there it was. What was I supposed to do now? I stood there in the cold silence of our living room, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I couldn't quite comprehend what had just happened. She was gone, just like that. My wife. The woman I thought I knew, the one I built a life with. Gone. And I was left standing in the wreckage, holding my phone like some kind of pathetic witness to my own heartbreak. I knew she had left me, but there was something haunting about the finality of it. There was no drama, no argument, no tearful goodbyes. She had simply packed her things and walked out. No explanation, no real goodbye, just a cold, calculated decision that shattered me into pieces. I glanced at the screen of my phone, the footage still playing in slow motion in front of me. Her face was unreadable, distant. And then, there it was again, him. The man she'd been seeing behind my back. The man who had taken everything from me without even trying. The way they looked at each other, the way she smiled at him, it was clear. She had made her choice. And now I was nothing but a spectator in my own life. I felt like I was losing control. I had spent years trying to keep everything together, trying to hold on to the illusion of happiness. I worked long hours, tried to be the perfect husband, the one who didn't cause trouble, who didn't ask questions. But all that did was push her away. It made her find someone else. It made her find him. I felt a wave of anger rise in my chest. Anger at her, at him, at myself. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed all the signs? All the late nights, the sudden trips, the secrecy. They had been right there in front of me, and I had ignored them. I had buried my head in the sand because I didn't want to face the truth. But now, the truth was staring me in the face, and it was worse than anything I could have imagined. I walked to the window and stared out into the street, watching the cars drive by. The world was moving on, and here I was, stuck in a moment I couldn't escape. I thought about her, about everything she had said. "I'm sorry," she had whispered before leaving. But there was no apology in her voice. No regret. She wasn't sorry. She had made her decision, and she was sticking to it. It was hard to admit, but I was relieved. I had been living a lie I had created for myself. For years, I had convinced myself that everything was fine, that we were happy. But now, in the quiet aftermath of her departure, I realized how much I had been ignoring. The lies, the secrets, the distance between us. It had all been there, waiting to break free. I sat back down on the couch, my mind racing. I wanted to call her, to demand an explanation, to yell, to cry, to do something. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't change anything. It was too late for explanations. Too late for apologies. The damage had been done. And then, just as I was about to pick up the phone and make a call I knew I would regret, I heard a knock at the door. A soft knock, almost tentative. For a moment, I thought it was her, coming back to apologize, to explain herself. But then I remembered. She was gone. I stood up slowly and walked toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Who could it be? I opened the door, half expecting to see someone I didn't recognize. But there he was. The man. The one who had stolen everything from me. Standing there, looking at me with those cold, confident eyes. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low but firm. I wanted to slam the door in his face, to tell him to get the hell out of my life. But something stopped me. Curiosity? Rage? I wasn't sure. All I knew was that this was the moment I had been dreading, the moment I had never wanted to face. He stepped forward, and I couldn't bring myself to close the door. Instead, I stood there, silently, waiting for him to speak. "You don't need to hear this," he said, his words coming out like they were rehearsed. "But she's not coming back." It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but it was what I needed to hear. The truth, even if it cut deeper than anything else. He wasn't lying. She wasn't coming back. She had chosen him. And now, I had to find a way to pick up the pieces. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what was happening. The man, the one who had taken everything from me, was standing on my doorstep, talking as if it was just another day. He wasn't offering an apology, nor was he asking for forgiveness. He was simply stating facts, cold, emotionless facts that hit me harder than any words she could have spoken. "Look, I didn't want it to happen this way," he said, his voice casual, almost too calm for what had just occurred. "But I think you know it's been coming for a while now." I could barely breathe. I had been drowning in this feeling for weeks now, unable to put the pieces together, and now here it was. The truth, laid out in front of me by the man who had stolen my wife. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him feel what I was feeling, but I didn't. I just stood there, staring at him, trying to make sense of the words he was saying. He had no right to be here, no right to speak to me like this, yet he was. And that terrified me. "You don't understand," I finally managed to say, my voice trembling slightly, a mixture of anger and pain lacing every syllable. "You have no idea what you've done." His eyes flickered with something. Maybe guilt, maybe not. But it didn't matter. The damage had already been done, and no amount of words could undo what had happened. I had always thought I was the one who would walk away first, the one who would hold the power in the relationship. But it turned out I was wrong. She had made her choice. She had chosen him over me. "I do understand," he said, his voice softening just a bit, though it still carried that detached quality. "But you need to know. She doesn't want this life with you anymore. It's over, man." I felt something inside me snap. The finality of his words hit me harder than anything else. I had always been the one who tried to keep things together, the one who did everything right, and now this was how it ended. My world, the one I had carefully constructed over the years, had just crumbled in front of me. And he was here, standing in my doorway, telling me it was over, like it was some kind of business transaction. No emotion, no remorse, just the brutal truth. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper now. I couldn't even look him in the eye anymore. "Why her? Why this?" He sighed, as if the answer were simple, as if this was something that happened all the time. "Because it just happened. Things fall apart, man. You're not a bad guy, but you've been so disconnected." She needed more, and I gave it to her. I didn't know what to say. How could I respond to that? The truth hurt, but at least it was the truth. I had been blind to the distance growing between us, too caught up in my own life to see what was slipping away. And now she was gone. The woman I had loved for so long had found something with him, something I hadn't been able to provide. And the worst part? He was right. She didn't want this life with me anymore. She didn't want the man I had become. I stepped back, almost involuntarily, as the weight of the moment crashed down on me. He didn't follow me inside, though. He stood there, almost waiting for something. For me to say something, maybe. For me to scream. For me to beg. But I didn't. I couldn't. It was too late for that. There was no saving this. For the first time, I realized how powerless I had become in my own life. I had let everything slip away without even realizing it. I had been so busy trying to be the man I thought I should be, the perfect husband, the perfect provider, that I had forgotten what really mattered. I had stopped paying attention to her, stopped paying attention to us. "Goodbye," he said finally, breaking the silence. It wasn't a taunt, but it wasn't kind either. It was simply the end of something that had been dying for a long time. And just like that, he turned and walked away, disappearing down the street as if he was leaving behind a simple mistake. But for me, this was my life unraveling. The man who had stolen my wife didn't even look back. He didn't have to. He had won. And I was left with nothing but the shattered remnants of everything I thought I knew. I closed the door slowly, the click of the lock sounding louder than anything. I stood there for a moment, not sure what to do next. Should I call her? Should I try to fix this, even though it was clear that she didn't want fixing? But I knew deep down, the answer was already in front of me. She wasn't coming back. And somehow, I had to find a way to move forward. But how? How could I possibly move on from something like this? From the betrayal, from the loss, from the emptiness that now filled every inch of this house. I didn't have the answers, and I didn't know if I ever would. All I knew was that my life, as I had known it, was over. The hours passed slowly, dragging me through a haze of disbelief and anger. I had closed the door, but it felt like I had closed the door on my entire life. I sat there in the dim light of the living room, staring at the phone in my hand, wondering what to do with the silence that had taken over. I should have felt relief, right? After all, I was free from the lies, free from the hurt, but instead, I felt emptier than I had ever been. I couldn't stop replaying the words in my head. She doesn't want this life with you anymore. His words were like a mantra now, echoing through my mind, over and over again. It hurt in a way I couldn't even describe. It wasn't just the fact that she had left me, it was the fact that, somehow, deep down, I knew he was right. I had become someone I didn't recognize. The man I used to be, the one who was attentive, present, the one who cared. He was gone. And she had found someone who could give her what I couldn't. That realization was like a wound that would never heal. I walked around the house, touching the things that used to bring comfort. The pictures on the wall, the books on the shelf, the coffee mug that had once been our favorite. Now they just felt like reminders of everything I had lost. I couldn't escape it. There was no corner of this house, no place I could go, where the weight of it all didn't follow me. I thought about calling her, but what would I even say? The truth was, I was terrified of hearing her voice. Terrified that she would confirm what I already knew, that she was gone, that she was with him, that I had been replaced. I tried to distract myself, but the thoughts kept creeping back. I wanted to believe that this was just a phase, that maybe she was just confused, but the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. She had made her choice, and I had no one to blame but myself. My entire life, I had built my identity around my work, around my career, around providing for her. I had always thought that would be enough. But it wasn't. I wasn't enough. The sudden ring of my phone jolted me from my thoughts. I glanced down at the screen and saw the name I had been avoiding. It was her sister, Sarah. I hesitated for a moment, not sure if I wanted to hear anything that had to do with her. But before I could make a decision, I swiped to answer. "Hey, it's me." Sarah's voice came through, warm and familiar, but there was a tension in her tone that I couldn't ignore. I know this might not be the best time, but I need to talk to you about something." My heart skipped a beat. Why was she calling me? Was this about Elaine? Was she trying to explain, to make sense of everything that had happened? I felt a mix of hope and dread. Maybe, just maybe, Sarah could offer some insight into why this had happened, why her sister had chosen this path. "I'm listening," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The last thing I wanted to do was let her hear how broken I was. "I've been trying to get in touch with Elaine, but she's not answering. She's been staying at my place for the past few days, but she's acting so distant. And Sarah paused, as if she was unsure of how to continue. "I don't know if you're aware, but she's been spending a lot of time with someone else." I felt a cold rush of panic hit me. "I know," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know who it is." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear Sarah taking a breath, unsure how to approach the next part. "Look, I don't know what happened between you two, but I know Elaine. She doesn't make decisions like this without a reason. I just want you to know that she's not doing well right now. I think she's struggling." Struggling? Struggling with what? With the guilt? The regret? The reality of what she had done? It was hard to tell. I had no idea what she was going through, what was going on in her head, and it was killing me. But what was worse? The fact that I didn't know what was going on in her mind, or the fact that, even now, she couldn't bring herself to talk to me? "Is she okay?" I asked, my voice barely audible. I didn't even know if I wanted to know the answer. "She's been crying a lot," Sarah said softly. "She won't talk about it, but I know she's not handling this well. She's just lost, I think." "Lost?" The word hit me like a ton of bricks. She had left me, chosen someone else, but now she was lost. Was this some kind of cruel irony? She had made her choice, and now she was confused? The thought was maddening. I'm sorry, Sarah added after a moment of silence. I didn't want to call you. I didn't want to make things worse, but I thought you should know. She might need you, even if she doesn't know how to ask for it. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to go to her, to fix it, to somehow make everything right. But another part of me knew it was too late for that. She had already moved on. She had already chosen him. I don't know what to do, I admitted, feeling a wave of hopelessness wash over me. I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel right now. You're hurt, Sarah said gently, almost like a reminder. You have every right to feel that way. Just don't close yourself off completely. You still deserve happiness, even if you can't see it right now. Her words were comforting, but they didn't change anything. I still had to face the reality of what had happened. I still had to find a way to live with the fact that the woman I had loved for so long no longer wanted me. And that truth was harder to swallow than anything I had ever faced. Thanks, Sarah, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know if I can fix this, but I appreciate you telling me. Take care of yourself, she said, and with that, the call ended. I sat in the silence once more, the weight of her words pressing on me. How could I move forward from this? How could I possibly pick up the pieces of my life when everything I thought I knew had been ripped away? I had no answers. All I had was the emptiness that stretched out in front of me and the growing realization that, maybe, for the first time in my life, I was completely alone. The days blurred together in a haze of confusion, anger, and aching loneliness. I had been here before, in this house, surrounded by the echoes of what once was, but now it felt entirely foreign. I couldn't escape the feeling that everything had shifted, not just in the physical world, but in my very core. I was a man caught between two realities, the life I had known and the nightmare that was now unfolding before me. The phone calls, the late-night conversations, the desperate attempts to understand her departure, they were all behind me now. After talking to Sarah, I had resolved to step back, to give her space, to allow her to figure out whatever it was she was struggling with. But in the quiet moments, I couldn't stop myself from wondering if I was doing the right thing. Was it possible that she still cared? Or had she already closed the door on us completely? Every room in this house seemed to echo with the ghosts of our former selves. I could still see her in the kitchen, laughing over a cup of coffee, still feel the warmth of her hand in mine as we walked through the park on lazy Sunday afternoons. The images came and went, fleeting memories of a life that no longer existed. And with every passing minute, I felt further from the man I once was, further from the man I thought she had loved. I needed answers, but there was nothing left to grasp. I had no choice but to accept that the love I had worked so hard to hold on to had slipped through my fingers, leaving nothing but the cold reality of betrayal. And yet, despite everything, there was this one small, almost pathetic part of me that wanted her back, wanted to believe that it wasn't too late. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of her walking away, and I knew, deep down, that the door between us had already closed for good. I couldn't escape the guilt. It gnawed at me from the inside out. Maybe I had pushed her away. Maybe I had been too focused on building a life for us that I had forgotten to actually live that life with her. I thought about the times I had come home late from work, the times I had brushed off her concerns, the times I had put my job and my ambitions before her. Was that it? Had I driven her into his arms with my indifference? But then, there were moments when the anger took over. The rage that burned through me like wildfire. How could she do this? How could she betray me, after everything we had built? How could she choose him over me, after everything I had given her? I wanted to yell, to scream at her, to make her feel what I was feeling. But I knew that would never happen. She was gone, and there was no going back. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was sitting on the couch, mindlessly flipping through channels on the TV. I wasn't really watching anything. I couldn't focus on anything for long. My mind kept drifting back to her, back to the look in her eyes when she had told me she was leaving. The coldness, the detachment. It was like she had already checked out, already made up her mind, and nothing I could say would change it. Then, just as I was about to turn off the TV, a breaking news story flashed across the screen. It was about a robbery that had occurred in a nearby neighborhood. The reporter was speaking about a string of recent break-ins, warning people to be vigilant. But it wasn't the crime that caught my attention. It was the man standing in the background of the shot, caught on camera. He was tall, wearing a jacket and a baseball cap, his face partially obscured. But something about him seemed familiar. I leaned forward, my heart racing. It was him. The man. The one who had taken her away from me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was it a coincidence? Was this really him? The man who had quietly slipped into my life, into my marriage, and taken everything I thought I knew? It didn't make sense. He wasn't just some stranger. He was the one she had chosen. The one she had betrayed me for. I grabbed the remote and froze the screen, my fingers shaking. The man in the footage was still partially hidden, but there was no mistaking it now. It was him. It had to be. My mind raced with questions. Why was he involved in a robbery? Was this just some coincidence, or was there something more to it? Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and called Sarah. She picked up on the second ring. Hello. Sarah, listen, I need you to check something for me. I just saw something on the news. I think it's him. The guy Elaine's been seeing. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear Sarah taking a deep breath, and then she spoke, her voice soft but cautious. What are you talking about? Are you sure? I'm sure, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. I just saw him on TV. He's involved in something, Sarah. A robbery. I don't know what it means, but I need you to find out who he is. Please. I don't know if I can do that, she said slowly. It's not that simple, you know. I don't even know if I should be telling you any of this. You need to let Elaine handle this on her own. Elaine! I almost shouted, but I caught myself. She's involved with this guy, Sarah? She doesn't even know what she's getting into. You have to help me. I could hear Sarah hesitating, and then she sighed. I'll see what I can do, but you need to be careful. You're treading dangerous waters here. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. What was happening? Was this just another piece of the puzzle, or was I just grasping at straws? My heart was pounding in my chest, and for the first time since she left, I felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. If he was involved in something like this, then maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to stop this. Maybe there was still a way to get her back. But then, as quickly as the hope came, it was replaced by a cold realization. I was in way over my head, and I had no idea where this would lead. Would I ever get the answers I was searching for? Or was I just playing a dangerous game I couldn't win? The hours that followed felt like a blur of nervous anticipation, mixed with a rising sense of dread. I could hardly focus on anything. My thoughts kept drifting back to the image on the screen, the man who had destroyed everything. It was as if I couldn't escape it. The longer I thought about it, the more questions flooded my mind. How was he involved in this robbery? Was it a coincidence that he had crossed paths with my wife? Was it just a fleeting connection, or was there something darker behind it? And most importantly, why hadn't Elaine told me any of this? The phone call with Sarah had only added to the chaos swirling in my head. She had said she'd look into it, but I couldn't rely on that. If I wanted answers, I had to find them myself. I didn't care if it meant going down a dangerous path. I needed to know who this man was. I had to understand what kind of person he was and how he could have so easily wormed his way into my life, taking my wife with him. I spent the next few hours scrolling through news articles, trying to find any information about the robbery or the man in the footage. The more I looked, the more tangled the web seemed. There were no names, no specifics. Just a vague report about a string of break-ins in the neighborhood, with a suspect caught on camera. But there was no mention of the man's identity. It was like he didn't exist. Just a faceless figure, a shadow, lurking in the background of my life. And that was driving me mad. It was well into the night when I finally gave up on the search. My eyes burned from staring at the screen for too long, and my mind was too tired to process anything more. But sleep wasn't an option. My thoughts were racing, spiraling out of control, and I knew that the answers I was searching for weren't going to come from a computer screen. They were going to come from Elaine. I knew I should have reached out to her. I knew I should have tried to get her to talk, but something inside me told me to wait. Maybe I was hoping she would come back on her own. Maybe I was waiting for her to regret her decision. But deep down, I knew that if I reached out, it would be a futile attempt. She had made her choice, and no matter how much I wished for things to be different, I couldn't undo what had already been done. But then, just as I was about to call it a night, my phone rang again. I glanced at the screen and saw Sarah's name. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. It had only been a few hours since I'd spoken to her, so why was she calling again so soon? I quickly answered, trying to hide the tension in my voice. Hello? I've got something, Sarah said, her voice low, almost as if she was nervous. I didn't want to tell you this over the phone, but I think you need to know. I've been talking to some people, and I found out who the guy is. His name is Nathan Hale. Nathan Hale. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. I had never heard it before, but somehow, it felt all too familiar. I didn't know why, but something about it sent a chill down my spine. Who is he? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of dread and curiosity. What do you know about him? Sarah hesitated, as if she was trying to choose her words carefully. He's not just some guy, I'll tell you that much. He has a record, a long one. It's not just petty theft. We're talking about serious stuff. Robberies, drug dealing. You name it. But what's worse, I think he's been using Elaine. I don't think she even knew what she was getting into. I felt my stomach twist into a knot. This wasn't just a simple affair. This wasn't just some man she'd fallen for. No, this was far worse. This was someone who had been playing her from the beginning. Someone who had used her, manipulated her, and now I was stuck in the middle of it. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, my voice sharp with frustration. Why didn't you say anything when you first found out? I didn't know how, Sarah replied, sounding genuinely remorseful. I didn't know what to say. I thought maybe Elaine would snap out of it, but she hasn't. I think she's in over her head, and she's too scared to get out. Scared. The word lingered in my mind. Was she really scared? Or had she just made her decision? I couldn't tell anymore. All I knew was that this Nathan Hale wasn't someone to be taken lightly. And if he was involved with her, if he was controlling her, then I had no idea how deep this ran. I need to talk to her, I said suddenly, a sense of determination growing inside me. I need to find her, Sarah. I can't just sit here and do nothing while he drags her further into this mess. I don't know if that's a good idea, Sarah warned. He's dangerous, and if you push too hard, it could get ugly. Elaine, she's not the same. She's changed. You might not even recognize her anymore. The warning stung, but I ignored it. I couldn't just sit here and wait for someone else to fix this. I had to do something. I had to find her. I don't care, I said, my voice firm. I'm done waiting. If she's in trouble, I'm going to get her out. I have to. And with that, I hung up the phone, my heart racing. The pieces of this twisted puzzle were starting to come together, but they didn't make anything clearer. They only made things worse. Nathan Hale. Robbery. Manipulation. I didn't know what kind of world Elaine had stepped into, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her stay there. Not without a fight. I grabbed my coat, the cold air biting at my skin as I stepped outside into the night. I had no idea where to start, no idea where to find her or him, but I was done sitting idly by. It was time to end this, one way or another. And I wouldn't stop until I had the answers. Until I had her back. The night felt colder than it ever had before as I walked through the streets, the weight of everything pushing down on me with each step. My mind raced with thoughts of Elaine, of Nathan Hale, and the mess I had found myself in. But despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, there was something else that kept me going, a flicker of hope. I wasn't sure where I would find her, or even if I could reach her, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to give up. I couldn't. As I walked, I replayed the words Sarah had said to me. Elaine's not the same anymore, she had warned. But as the hours passed and I reflected, I began to think that maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe the woman I loved hadn't completely disappeared. Maybe there was still a part of her that wanted to find her way back. The woman I had known was kind, strong, compassionate, and somewhere deep down, I believed that part of her was still in there, buried beneath the mistakes and the lies. I took a deep breath and called Sarah again. This time, I didn't want to waste time. I needed to know where Elaine was, needed to understand where to start this search. Sarah picked up after a few rings, her voice calm but tinged with uncertainty. I found out where she's staying, Sarah said after a brief pause. It's a small apartment on the edge of town, near the old diner. She's been staying there for a while now, but I don't think she's in a good place. A surge of adrenaline rushed through me as I listened. This was it. This was my chance to do something, to stop just being a passive bystander in my own life. Thank you, Sarah, I said, my voice steady now. I'm going to go get her. I'll handle it. Please be careful, she warned again, but I could hear the worry in her voice, and something else, a hint of hope. She knew, just like I did, that this wasn't going to be easy, but it was the only chance we had. I didn't waste another moment. I got into my car and drove through the streets, the headlights illuminating the darkness ahead. The drive felt endless, but in my chest, I felt a quiet determination growing with every mile. I wasn't sure what I would say when I found her, or how I would get through to her, but I knew I couldn't let her slip away without trying. When I finally reached the apartment building, it was late, the windows were dark, and the street was quiet. My heart pounded in my chest as I walked up the stairs to her door, the world outside fading away as I focused solely on this one moment. I knocked softly, the sound echoing in the empty hall. There was a long pause, and just as I was about to knock again, the door creaked open. She stood there, looking surprised, yet somehow relieved to see me. Her hair was messy, her eyes tired, but there was something in them, a flicker of recognition. A recognition of me. A recognition of us. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice soft but hesitant. "I had to see you," I replied, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know things have been complicated, but I'm not giving up on you. I'm not giving up on us." She looked at me for a long moment, her gaze shifting from the ground to my face. Then, slowly, she stepped aside and let me in. The tension between us was palpable, but so was the warmth that had never fully left. "I've made so many mistakes," she said, her voice cracking. "I don't know how to fix everything. I don't know where to start. I don't have all the answers either," I said, stepping closer, my hand reaching out to gently hold hers. "But I know that we're better together. We always were." For a long time, we stood there, holding each other, the weight of everything hanging in the air. But in that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was that we were both here, still standing, still breathing. And maybe that was enough for now. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice full of regret. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to stop." "You don't have to explain," I said softly. "We've both made mistakes, but that doesn't mean we can't start again." She looked at me with tears in her eyes, but this time, there was a softness in her expression that hadn't been there before. "I don't know if I deserve this," she said. "You do," I replied firmly. "We both deserve a second chance." For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a small smile tug at the corner of her lips. It wasn't the same as before, it wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. It was a step toward healing, toward finding our way back. We sat down together, talking for hours, working through the mess we had created. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But in that moment, I realized something important. Love wasn't just about the perfect moments, the good times. It was about the messy, complicated times, too. It was about standing by each other when everything felt like it was falling apart. And maybe that was the hardest, but the most important part of it all. By the time the morning light began to filter through the window, I felt a sense of peace settle in my chest. We were far from fixed, but we were both willing to try. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for. I didn't know what the future held, or where this path would take us. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we had a chance. A real chance. And I wasn't about to let it slip away. We were going to be okay. We would rebuild, piece by piece, together.